Good morning, friends from the media. Welcome to today's press briefing. The Chief Executive will first speak briefly before answering questions. Because of the epidemic, please stay socially distanced. We'll first hear from the Chief Executive. Friends from the media, Hong Kong people, good morning. Today is the first EXCO meeting after the Chinese New Year. As I said last week, today in the LegCo meeting, we will discuss about the current epidemic situation. We will make legislative amendments to enhance the effectiveness of our measures. It's not appropriate for me to make any announcements because the EXCO meeting is yet to be convened. But shortly afterwards, I will speak to you about the decisions made by the EXCO of what needs to be updated. Given the spike in number of cases and the fact that yesterday's number of cases was over 600, this figure is quite shocking. Our experts and members of the public are very concerned and anxious. It has brought along another wave of discussion as to what Hong Kong's anti-epidemic measures should be. At the moment, I cannot give details about the detailed deliberations of the EXCO, but I'd like to take stock of our experience in the past 2 years in our work of fighting the epidemic and what our current initiatives are. In our fight against the epidemic, we need to stand by a philosophy. Otherwise, we will see measures being changed all the time. So, still at this moment, we will stand by the dynamic zero or dynamic containment strategy. Reality is that the battle against the epidemic has been going on for over a year. We started the vaccination in February last year, but amongst the elderly people, those over the age of 70, the vaccination rate is less than 50%. That means close to 500,000 people who are above the age of 70 is still yet to be vaccinated. If they are infected by Omicron, which is highly transmissible, and if they suffer a serious condition or falls into a critical condition, this will put pressure on our healthcare system, which is already on the brink of oversaturation. As I said yesterday, from the information obtained from the hospital authority, for those who have been admitted and require high-intensity clinical care, say, for example, the use of respirators or are staying in the ICU, the number is not high, but those people who are suffering from these conditions have not been vaccinated. The risk is increasing because there are more cases in the residents of residential care homes and their workers. So we need to boost the vaccination rate. Some people say that if we are to achieve dynamic zero, it means a high social and monetary cost. But I'd like to say that lives, public health, and the integrity of our public healthcare system has to be preserved. And some people commented that dynamic zero cannot be sustained. But this is the time for us to boost our vaccination rate so as to avoid the pressure that no one can take, as I mentioned before. Our strategies are still prevention of imported cases and prevention of local spread. These strategies have protected us in the four waves in the past. Starting from May last year till the end of December, we have had a rather stable situation. As a result, we have relaxed a number of social distancing measures. But our strategies of prevention of imported cases and community spread is not cast in stone. The government has been making adjustments taking into account the situation. From May to end of December last year, when our situation was rather stable, we have relaxed some measures. People could move about and resume certain activities, and businesses could resume their duty. But at the end of December, when we had the first Omicron, we swiftly tightened our measures to almost the most stringent level. It took effect on the 7th of January. In light of the short incubation period and the high transmissibility of Omicron, we were able to make adjustments in terms of prevention of imported cases and local spread to alleviate our measures. Say, for example, the shortening of quarantine period at Penny's Bay from 21 days to 14 days. And those who arrive in Hong Kong, they only have to go through 14 days of quarantine instead of 21 days. And because of the short incubation period of Omicron, this morning we announced that in relation to CTN compulsory testing notices, the frequency of testing is now 2 times instead of 3. That means for the first 3 days, they need to undertake a nucleic test and another one between the 4th and the 6th day. As I've said, we will keep adjusting our measures. But the basic principle is swiftness, because we're talking about lives and limb. So we make use of scientific-based approach for early identification, isolation, and treatment. The latest wave came very suddenly, yet we were able to enhance our capabilities. But resources are finite. So another principle of our anti-epidemic method is precision. We need to make use of our finite resources on isolation, quarantine, treatment, and testing at an optimum level. So when it comes to RTD, restriction and testing declaration, CTN and RAT, rapid antigen test, and voluntary testing, lockdown of a larger area, a smaller area, over 1, 2, 3, 5, or even 7 days. When it comes to our sewage surveillance system, every single measure involves manpower resources, and it's a race against time. Of course, we have to take into account the level of acceptance and tolerance of the general public. Please understand that the anti-epidemic method has to be precise, because there is no government in the world that has at their disposal infinite energy and resources. But there is room for our capabilities to be enhanced. As I've told you last week, that we have made an effort to enhance our capabilities. I'm sure that after the EXCO meeting, we'll be able to speak to you about these enhancements. These enhancements cover all different aspects involving all bureaus and departments. I'd like to thank our testing contractors. They have been working around the clock. The design capacity is about 100,000 tests per day, but in the past few days, they have achieved over 200,000 tests per day, and we're talking about nucleic tests. So I'm grateful to the contractors for their help in enhancing our testing capacities. And I would also like to thank enterprises to allow their employees to work from home. A lot of bodies and societies have mobilized volunteers to help our work. Yesterday was the first working day of mainland China after the Chinese New Year. The Hong Kong Macau office contacted me and conveyed to me the care of the central authorities of Hong Kong, and they've also expressed their support. They said that we should have confidence and that central authorities would provide the support we need to fight the epidemic. Well, as I've told you that, there is a direct line with the Guangdong provincial government for us to make requests as needed. And a number of batches of manpower has been sent from Guangdong to help Hong Kong. We need your support. We need your cooperation. Please stay at home. Your help comes in a very easy form. You only need to stay at home. And if you feel that you're at risk, please take tests and keep yourself informed of government information. And if need be, please provide support to those who are staying at home for isolation or quarantine under the Leave Home Safe scheme. I'm sure that with all your cooperation and work, we'll be able to keep the latest wave under control.
Now I have to take your questions, and there will be a second conference after the Executive Council meeting. Let's be brief, as we can have 3 reporters and 2 questions each. This lady.
Could you speak louder, sorry?
Can't hear you.
Yeah. Hi, is this better? Thank you, I'm from Bloomberg. No city has ever squashed an outbreak of this size before without a full lockdown. Is that Hong Kong's only option now? And if not, why not? And what other options are there?
Well, actually, I have just spent a few minutes to outline to you the strategy adopted by the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government to tackle this latest wave caused by a highly transmissible Omicron. At this moment, we still feel that this is the best strategy for Hong Kong, using all our capacity and our means to ensure that we could achieve the dynamic zero target, and that is we should contain the spread of virus as much and as fast as possible. Thank you.
第二條提問。
Second question. In the front row in the middle. Phoenix TV. Since there are so many hidden transmission chains in the community, however, the government refused to implement a universal testing. Is that because of a lack of capacity or any other considerations? I've answered this many times, and during my remarks, I have reiterated the view that the government's capacity, including that of testing to treat as to isolate, is not infinite. In order to achieve the best results, we need to focus on where to put on our capacity instead of spreading around and not achieving my objective. I have provided some figures. If you pay close attention on certain buildings or communities to conduct lockdown testing, and by the next morning we can tell you that we can find a lot of cases in these testing, and sometimes we're able to have a few dozen cases in the same building. We will focus our resources on the certain building or community so to discover more cases and isolate them right away, so to prevent these cases from entering the community and spreading them around. So this has been our consideration. Last reporter in the front row on the edge. cable news. And last week you said you would consider tightening the anti-epidemic policy. Will you consider implement the vaccine pass and restrict dine-in and restrict to 2 diners per table? And would you consider implementing vaccine pass for public transport? And with the CE election coming up under the COVID epidemic, that will you decide to go ahead with the election anyway? Now that you have some cross-boundary truck drivers being infected, which prevent the vegetables entering Hong Kong, that led to a short supply. Probably over 99% vegetables cannot come to Hong Kong. Since there's a shortage, how can you ensure there's adequate supply of vegetables in Hong Kong? Maybe just 2 questions. In regards to cross-boundary logistics, that's what I refer to, that why we need to put in various initiatives, for example, like exemptions or special arrangements to ensure that the flow of goods, either by air or by road, can remain uninterrupted. And therefore, we make some special arrangements on imports. And if there are infection cases due to the imports of goods, well, not only we're concerned, the mainland is also concerned, and therefore we will respond accordingly. And during the enforcement of these measures, this will inevitably impact the supply of goods. That's why we need to fight the epidemic together. Otherwise, that we all have to pay for the consequences. As for the tightening and the use of the vaccine pass, I'm afraid that after the Executive Council come to a decision, then I will make an announcement. As for the election for the Chief Executive, as of now, it's still a start nomination on February and the voting date on the 19th of March. As one note that the C election is a rather small-scale event. It will be held, the date will be March 27th, and I believe that with all the safe health precaution measures to ensure the election conducted smoothly, I believe it's much easier than a bigger scale election involving millions of voters. Therefore, I don't see that why we need to postpone the election. However, this is the assessment of now. Well, since that the pandemic is rapidly evolving, I can only do my best to explain and give you an update and also provide more opportunities for questions as for how we're doing. And therefore, I will see you later.